Well, thank you to everyone who voted in my last poll for the movie Sorry, Wrong Number. And don't worry, for those of you who voted for Tarzan, I will get to that one soon. Sorry, Wrong Number from 1948 was a suspense-filled masterpiece starring Barbara Stanwyck. She plays a wealthy, bedridden woman who just happens to overhear a murder plot through a crossed telephone line. This was a fantastic movie with a doozy of an ending, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'll give an overview of the film and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up and we see these switchboard operators hard at work, and we're given a message about how in the city the telephone is the unseen link between millions of lives, and indeed, the telephone will play a very big role in this film. And we cut to Barbara Stanwyck, who plays the character of Leona Stevenson. She is an invalid, she is in bed, and she has been trying unsuccessfully to reach her husband by telephone. Her servants are all gone for the evening, and as she talks and makes these attempts at a phone call, the camera just pans around, slowly, a little mysteriously, showing that she is confined to this large, empty house. She's got some creepy music with it as well. She pleads with these operators to try again and again, and they just can't reach her husband. Now, it's around this time that she accidentally intercepts another call. She overhears two guys who are talking about breaking into a house at 11 o'clock that night to commit a murder and also steal some jewelry as well. And they don't notice that she is listening into this call. So she gets back on with the head operator and explains, she intercepted this murder plot. And when she gets no results from the operator, she goes to the police and speaks with an officer who's there with this baby that's just precariously sitting on a desk. And what was that all about? Well, whatever. The officer basically tells her that it's such a vague lead that there really isn't much that they can do. And, she's impatient. She gets annoyed and just hangs up. Okay, don't listen. Who cares? Well, Leona talks with her dad, the character of James Cotterill, who's played by actor Ed Begley. And I love how the camera pans around his room and you see all of these taxidermied animal heads on the wall. And he talks to her, says he misses her, but he does seem a little distracted by a party that happens to be going on in the background. Well, next, Leona calls her husband's secretary, this Miss Jennings, played by actress Dorothy Newman. And this is another situation where she seems maybe a little too engrossed in her bingo game. But from her, she learns that her husband, and the husband's name is Henry, is played by Burt Lancaster, had apparently briefly met with and planned a lunch date with a mysterious blonde named Sally Lord, played by actress Ann Richards. Miss Jennings tells her that he had left for lunch with her and did not return for the rest of the day. Well, Leona is growing more and more frustrated with Henry, that she can't reach him, and she really seems to be struggling as well from just the confines of this room in the heat of the city. Also, she's wearing this ridiculously uncomfortable looking outfit that probably doesn't help things. Well, next in her phone calls, Leona reaches out to Sally, who answers. Now, her husband is like a district attorney. He's working with another guy in the background. Sally seems a little bit kind of mysterious. She can't really speak, but she agrees to call Leona back later from like a private phone booth. And it's here that Leona has a flashback of her college days. And she thinks back to meeting with Henry. He had been dancing with Sally, but Leona, she's kind of headstrong. She cuts in. Well, while dancing with her, he finds out that Leona is the daughter of a pharmaceutical manufacturer. And she comes on really strong and asks him if he'd like to go for a drive. Henry, we find out, is just a high school dropout, while Leona is this wealthy heiress. And after they drive together and talk a little and share a ciggy, of course, they smooch. 1940s romance. Now, a little later when they are alone together, Sally confesses that she loves Henry, but Leona doesn't care, and she continues to pursue Henry herself. Leona meets with her dad, and of course, Dad's all against the idea of marrying him, because he's poor. But they get married, and we see a montage of their honeymoon travels together. And it's very interesting to watch, as there's a scene where they're out in public. He wants to give her a kiss, and she turns him down. Does she fear public displays of affection with someone of a lower class than herself? And I love the scene in this film as we see the montage of scenes of their wedding and the honeymoon as they travel, and you only hear the audio repeat of her part of the vows, where it's I, Leona, take thee, Henry, over and over. It's like, yeah, she took this guy as her own possession. Well, later in their room, she just happens to be going through his wallet and discovers there's still a picture of Sally. Well, a little bit later, we cut to the part where Sally gets to talk with Leona. And as she talks, we get a flashback where we see her husband, Fred Lord, played by actor Leif Erikson, and he's this district attorney who is apparently trying to set a trap for Henry. We don't know exactly why yet. Leona went into detective mode, it would seem, and started to follow him to find out what was going on in secret. And this pursuit leads to Staten Island, to a part of the island that's just beach and an old shack. I'm guessing, I don't know much about the boroughs of New York City, but it's probably not like that anymore today, I'm guessing. You can let me know in the comments if you're from New York, but I'm assuming Staten Island is not just island and so on. It's probably changed a lot in 70 years. But she follows and sees Henry leave with a parcel. But what could it be? So we cut back to her on the phone, and wouldn't you know it, she runs out of time on her call. And having used up all of her nickels, she has to go because the store that she's calling from is also closing. So that's as much of the narrative that she can relate at this point to Leona. So basically it would seem that Henry is in danger, but we don't really know why or what's going on. Well, Sally is able to make it to a subway station where she resumes the call with Leona again. She tells her that this house on Staten Island had apparently burned down. 3 men had been arrested, and it is tied somehow to the Cotterill Company. Remember, that's the company related to Leona's dad. Leona then receives a message informing her that Henry will be gone for the weekend. So she starts to panic, and hearing a train cross a nearby bridge, she really starts to freak out and collapse. Remember, that was part of what she overheard on the phone. There'd be like the sound of a train, and somebody would sneak in, and there would be a murder. Maybe she's starting to get paranoid that it might have been talking about her. Well, there's another phone call. She contacts her physician, Dr. Alexander, played by Wendell Corey. He's been in a lot of these old movies I've watched. And he reveals that several days ago, Henry had met with him about Leona's condition. And this is wild because he gives us a flashback of him talking to Henry that leads to another flashback in the flashback of Henry learning about Leona's illness. I mean, it's trippy. There are a lot of flashbacks in this film. So in this flashback, shortly after they've been married, there's a scene where Henry breaks a lunch date with Leona so that he can see about getting a new job. Leona isn't having it. She's very controlling, and she tries to lock him in the room with her, but he gets free, and she just collapses to the ground. She has a thing where whenever they fight, she just collapses, almost like she's having a heart attack. So he's trapped by her controlling ways, and if he does anything, she has these unexplainable health issues. However, here's the twist. When he meets with Dr. Alexander and he tells him he's examined Leona, and what he's found is that all of the problems are completely psychological, that her heart is actually perfectly fine. So what's going on? Is this all something crazy going on in her head? Now, we're back in the present time, and the doctor ends the call saying that he has not heard from Henry. And Leona, meanwhile, just freaks out, yelling, "They're all liars, liars!" Another call arrives, and now it's from the mysterious character Evans, and he talks to her, and we only see him in shadow at this point. He goes into more detail, and this takes us back into a flashback as he tells her the story. And this really gives us kind of the details, the background of what really went down. Henry had met with him, this character Evans, who's played by Harold Vermillion, who worked with all of these expensive chemicals for the company that he was with, to falsify the chemical records and basically sell portions of the pharmaceuticals to a fence. And this had gone on for a while, and Evans is transferred to the company's New Jersey plant. And it's here that Henry and Evans start to go into business for themselves, selling the chemicals out of the creepy little house on Staten Island. However, the criminal they had been fencing to, the character Morano, a very young William Conrad, he feels betrayed by this and later confronts the two of them at the house, demanding a ton of money from them and their remaining stock of drugs in exchange for their lives. When Henry protests that he has no money, Morano says that Henry can pay him with Leona's life insurance money. He knows that the doctor has only given Leona a short amount of time, apparently, that she will live. Now, Henry is cornered, and it's a terrible option to make, but what can he do? Now, I'm going to stop the summary here. Let me wrap up this review with some closing thoughts. Sorry, Wrong Number was released in 1948 and was directed by Anatol Livak with cinematography by Saul Polito. It was produced by Paramount Pictures, and the film was based on a highly successful radio play of the same name by Lucille Fletcher. It was one that was so popular it was subsequently broadcast every year for 10 years. It originally aired on the Suspense radio program on May 25th, 1943, with Agnes Moorehead in the lead role. I've had this film recommended by a couple viewers, and curiously enough, I also saw this referenced in, of all places, an episode of Murder, She Wrote from season 3. The episode is called Crossed Up, and it's similar to the film. The premise is that phone wires get crossed during a storm, and Jessica Fletcher, the star of the show, Angela Lansbury, she's been stuck in bed because she threw out her back. She overhears a murder plot and can't convince anyone that that's what she overheard. Having watched that episode and then doing a little research, I thought, all right, I need to watch this movie. This must be good enough to check out. Now, my thoughts on the film. I mean, wow, where to begin? The main thing that really stuck with me is that feeling of just the enclosed claustrophobia of that room that just carries through this film. The character Leona, Barbara Stanwyck's character, she's the invalid confined to her bed with only a phone to use. And boy, you just can't help but feel icky as she wants to get to the bottom of things. There's all these phone calls going on, but she just cannot leave this room. And you can't help but notice, like, her outfits just look itchy and uncomfortable. She's surrounded by this busy room with bottles and pills and whatnot. And she can't get out of this apartment on a hot night in the city. There's just no way for her to leave the room. She's got no way out. And as the film unfolds, we see she's slowly going crazy, concerned about her husband and concerned about this crime she's overheard, with seemingly no one interested at all. There's a wonderful Hitchcock feel to the film with the suspense, especially near the end of the film. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything about it. It also reminded me in a way of Hitchcock's film Rear Window, where you had Jimmy Stewart in a similar theme where he's an invalid character. He has like a cast on his leg. He thinks there's a crime going on and he can't really get anybody to believe him. So there's a great parallel there, and I really need to review Rear Window on this channel. I also love how, as this story is told, we don't really know much about who she is or what has caused her to be bedridden like this, but only piece by piece, it all starts to come together through her phone calls that lead to flashbacks, and sometimes flashbacks within flashbacks. And like pieces of a puzzle, just all slowly starts to come together. Now, you watch this film, and you think you've figured out what's going on, and nope, the film's going to lead you in another way, and then another. And it sort of subverts your expectations. Don't go into this thinking you know exactly what's going to happen, because it really kind of throws you at times. It's really great how it does that. Barbara Stanwyck is wonderful in this film, and she's without a doubt my favorite actress of old classic Hollywood. Her performance here is so good, and that you're carried along with her character and just want to see her get to the bottom of this murder mystery. And you feel just as much trapped as she is as you watch the film. And I love how things start off. You feel a little sorry for her character. And then as you get to learn more about her, you start to dislike her. But then as you learn more about her condition, you start to feel sorry for her. And all of these yo-yoing emotions just keep you spellbound, watching her character to see what will happen until you get up to that inevitable ending. There's a scene that so perfectly shows her manipulative nature when her husband Henry breaks that lunch date with her to see about a new job. And he had been working for her dad, basically, so he's kind of trapped within a family job situation. She wants and demands control, and when she can't have it, she locks the door, blocks him, almost like a temper tantrum, then pleads with him to the extent that he has to wrestle the key away from her just to get out. And this just leaves her collapsed to the ground. Her power has been broken. As you watch the film, Stanwyck's character goes from fairly cool and composed at the beginning to the point of complete hysteria. Her hair is all disheveled. She looks like almost on the verge of insanity. And honestly, she's the reason to watch this film. Burt Lancaster was also excellent in this movie as that henpecked husband character who clearly wants to break free but realizes he only has the job that he has thanks to his controlling wife and his father-in-law giving him this role almost out of pity. I mean, what a scene in this film when his character loses a job opportunity and then we see his father-in-law, who knew all about it and was just sort of pulling the strings, taunts him about the failure. You can see and understand what drives Lancaster's character to move into a more illegal direction. I also really admired the cinematography by Saul Polito. Frequently, you'd see a character talking, and the camera would just turn and sweep around the room, exploring the details and just kind of visually telling us a little more about that individual from the film. Like mentioned, when Leona's talking to her father, the camera pans around the room, showing a party going on in the background with hunting trophies on the wall and so on. And this just gives us a little extra glimpse into the story of who these characters are. The heavy contrast and the use of shadow and light also did remind me a little bit of John Alton's work. Visually, I especially love the sequences on Staten Island. I don't know how to explain it, but the cinematography has this hazy, detached quality to it during those scenes. I mean, even as the scene is going on, it's described as if it seems to exist in a kind of dream. And yeah, they really captured that dream state perfectly in the film. I also really love that creative inclusion of orchestral music in various scenes. Now note, I'm not just talking about the Franz Waxman score, which was amazing, but rather how you would have a scene with a character in the film, and they'd be like listening to a record or something like that, or there's dancing music playing in the background. And the music in that scene fills a double purpose. It's both the music of the world of this movie, but it's also music that sort of heightens the tension or the drama of the scene. Like take this scene, for instance. I mean, what can I say? I really enjoyed this one. And look, initially when watching, the beginning might seem a little bit slow, but give it a little time to build up. Watch the film for that unfolding of the story and the development of these characters. It's beautifully done. And again, what an ending. And this, again, Barbara Stanwyck's performance here is so good as she starts off kind of cool, kind of mean, but as we see things grow towards the ending and she builds in that hysteria and that madness. It's just amazing. This film had some classic noir with the look and the feel, that sequence with the hazy Staten Island, the noisy city, and the subway scenes. And as mentioned before, that feeling of containment, the futility, and knowing that there was a crime committed and not being able to do anything about it. It's so beautifully told here. There was some amazing performances by Barbara Stanwyck and Burt Lancaster. And you know, this is definitely a film it's worth checking out.